We open on an average day with people discussing whether young Jinsu is crazy. He's famous online for his videos showing executioners who come to collect those bound for hell. Jinsu claims they arrive after an angel issues a proclamation stating the day a person will be taken to hell. We get our first proof that Jinsu may not be crazy when a terrified Jumyoung sits, preparing for his death. At exactly 1:20, the foretold time, 3 rock monsters come for him. They're vicious, savagely beating him before extracting his soul and leaving only the man's charred bones in their wake. Despite video evidence of massive rock monsters murdering a man in broad daylight, the police treat this like any other case because what else can they do? Here we're introduced to Jin Kyung-hoon, a somewhat withdrawn yet principled officer tasked with investigating the religious movement called New Truth. Founded by Jinsu a decade prior, New Truth has been following similar cases throughout the globe and views the appearance of the rock monsters as divine retribution. According to Jinsu, every victim was an evildoer who committed vile deeds like rape or murder. Kyung-hoon and Jinsu immediately clash as Jinsu finds it laughable that the police are treating the demonstration of God's reminder to stay on the path of righteousness as murder, and Kyung-hoon thinks that Jinsu is a manipulative cult leader full of nonsense. Jinsu's pessimistic view that only fear compels people to be righteous doesn't sit well with the more idealistic Kyung-hoon, who still believes in the law despite feeling failed by it. Kyung-hoon's wife was murdered 6 years ago, and although the culprit was arrested, he only received a sentence of 10 years due to being under the influence of drugs at the time of the murder. He was recently released after serving 6 years. Jinsu and Kyung-hoon have this brief conversation about theology that seems to strike a chord with Jinsu. In response to Jinsu's belief that the rock monsters are God's message to humanity to live right, Kyung-hoon remarks that Jinsu's God must not believe in free will. Jinsu thinks it's an interesting point but strikes back by asking if human law provided true justice for Kyung-hoon's wife's murder. Jinsu claims he's not a cult leader, yet he amasses quite a big following. He's treated like a celebrity by his devotees. An elderly lady even tries to give him her seat on the subway. Despite his fame, he lives in a tiny dorm and prefers to take public transportation. Everything about him reads humble, yet there's something off about him. Jinsu has a morbidity to him, which makes sense when your religion hinges on violent death. When he first meets Kyung-hoon and his investigative partner Hong-eun, Jinsu shares that he grew up in a Catholic orphanage and planned to die as soon as he gained independence at 20. He traveled to a remote region of Tibet for this purpose and witnessed the rock monsters claiming a victim. And just like that, he found his life's mission. Jinsu's entire existence is wrapped up in his religious fervor and proselytizing, leaving little room for anything else. He uses any and every opportunity to advance his ideals in ways that are often callous. When the next victim, Park Young-ja, a single mother with 2 young children, is told by a glowing-eyed apparition, the supposed angel, that she's hellbound in 5 days, Jinsu's response is to offer her 3 billion won to let him live broadcast her being sent to hell. Young-ja decides to take the money on the off chance this is all real and her children are left destitute orphans. She goes to lawyer Min Hye-jin for help facilitating the transaction. Hye-jin is measured and resolute with a straightforward personality. Most of her life seems dedicated to her work, and the only aspect of her personal life we see is that she's the primary caretaker for her mother who has cancer. Publicly, Hye-jin has been a staunch opponent of New Truth, known for going after the cult and its fanatics. Fanaticism is a central theme of the drama, and its main embodiment here is Arrowhead, the radical offshoot of New Truth that takes matters into their own hands by assaulting sinners and putting them on the right path. They go after anyone who disparages God's will or encourages others not to believe in the New Truth doctrine. Or pretty much does anything they deem problematic. Their spokesperson is this live streamer with a dramatic makeup and wig who believes screaming everything gets his point across better. Unfortunately, he has quite a large following of like-minded fanatics willing to do anything for the cause. The drama pulls no punches in demonstrating extremism and mob mentality with Arrowhead's various atrocious deeds. Our first taste of what they're willing to do is when a group of teenagers record while they viciously beat a man for speaking out against the organization for being dangerous. While they seem like a small fringe group at the start, it becomes clear that Arrowhead holds more power than initially assumed. They even have agents within government organizations who feed them information on sinners who need to be punished. One such bit of information leaked is the identity of Young-ja and her children. Arrowhead goes crazy digging into social media to find intel, and the kids have to be secretly flown out of the country for their well-being. Protesters surround Yoonja's house, cheering her demise and demanding she repent of her supposed sins, of which they can only speculate. We reach a turning point and things start getting really ugly. Until now, no one has known what to believe about the video evidence of the rock monsters from hell. Even those who disparage the cult, like Hygiene, can't help but have doubts. With Yoonja's demonstration being made public via New Truth, it gives the nation the chance to witness and decide for themselves. Yoonja's date with hell essentially turns into a public execution with front row seats given to New Truth funders who conceal their identity under masks. Yoonja sits in her living room, the outside wall knocked down so the cameras and crowd outside have a good view of the spectacle. New Truth sounds a blaring alarm announcing the time has come, and there's even a countdown. People barely pay heed to the actual terrified woman sitting before them, awaiting her own demise. The whole nation watches in fascination and growing horror when the rock monsters do show up and savagely beat Yoonja to a pulp before collecting her soul. And now, everyone is a believer. This signals a large shift in the culture now that people are taking New Truth and its doctrine seriously. There's panic and confusion with people opting to just stay home in fear of facing their own divine retribution. Only New Truth and particularly Arrowhead revel in this horrifying era of judgment and fear. Arrowhead not only brazenly attacks specific anti-New Truth targets like Hygiene and her colleague, but brutally go after innocent people associated with them. A tragic side story unravels involving Kyung-hoon's teenage daughter Hee-young. Kyung-hoon discovers earlier on that she's been volunteering with New Truth and obviously isn't a fan, but he's hesitant to push since working with them seems to make her happy. She's been reticent since her mother's death, and their relationship is strained. There's a distance there that Kyung-hoon can't figure out how to cross. She doesn't seem like a fanatic, so he ends up leaving her be, but that turns out to be a mistake. Hee-young's grief and anger makes her vulnerable to Jin-soo's influence. He does more than indoctrinate her and goes so far as to locate her mother's murderer who's roaming free. Then, he instigates her to burn him alive. Yes, he incites and assists a teenage child to commit righteous murder. When Kyung-hoon discovers what Jin-soo has done, he's out for blood. He sets out to find Jin-soo, which is exactly what Jin-soo wants and leads us to the biggest turning point yet. From the start, it's been clear that Jin-soo is hiding something, and the end of episode 3 finds both Hygiene and Kyung-hoon separately learning that secret. Jin-soo calls Kyung-hoon to meet him and shares that 20 years ago, he received a proclamation that he's bound for hell in exactly 20 years. With only 10 minutes left to live, he's still not sure what sin he committed as a good child. In fact, he never found any evidence of the Hellbound being worse sinners than anyone else, it was all lies. But Jin-soo's fear made him live properly for 20 years, which is why he believes the only way to create a more righteous world is through making everyone feel this fear. Now we see Jin-soo for who he truly is, a desperate, broken man unraveling from spending 20 years in terror. Although the entire premise of New Truth is a lie, he's convinced himself he's doing the world a favor by providing order, a reason for why people are being killed and taken to hell. He's both terrible and pitiful. Jin-soo seems intrigued by Kyung-hoon and his notion of justice, so he leaves it to him whether he exposes the truth or not. If Kyung-hoon records Jin-soo being taken to hell, the world will devolve into further chaos upon learning of Jin-soo's lies. If he stays silent, he may prevent further chaos but has to live burdened by the truth. Kyung-hoon stands helpless while the rock monsters murder Jin-soo. He doesn't record. We briefly meet Jin-soo's New Truth successor Young-chil, and it looks like we're in for more destruction to come. Although Jin-soo was awful in his own right, something about Young-chil feels more malicious. Per Jin-soo's instructions, Young-chil meets with Hygiene and shares the truth of Jin-soo's prophesied death. Then, he shares with Hygiene that Jin-soo has ordered him to kill her. He doesn't want to get his hands dirty, so he calls an Arrowhead and drives away while they beat her to death. We pick up 4 years after Youngja's demonstration, with a new set of main characters, and everyone has adjusted to this new reality of rock monsters and hell. Creatively, we're brought up to speed through watching a draft of a New Truth documentary on their rise over the years. New Truth is now mainstream and runs the show with few willing to contradict them, even privately. They've turned places like Youngja's house into sacred sites and created museums dedicated to God's divine intervention. There's a disturbing efficiency to their operation wherein they refer to sinners by number and coordinate their demonstrations for maximum exposure and views. They even have a program to reform the children of those taken to hell, as if they're tainted. And of course, Arrowhead continues their reign of terror without consequence, assaulting supposed sinners and their families. People watch what they say out of fear because there are Arrowhead spies everywhere. Although New Truth is careful not to directly link themselves to Arrowhead, they have contacts in the organization and use their services under the table. For the most part, New Truth goes unchecked with public sentiment on their side out of fear, but not everyone falls in line. One brave soul who has no problem confronting New Truth head-on is Young Jay. While working on the New Truth documentary as one of its producers and to the terror of his colleagues, Young Jay directly confronts UG. Young Jay boldly calls New Truth out for trying to control every detail of the film and says this new culture of intimidation and condemnation is reminiscent of hell. Given the way the world has gone, it's a fair assessment, but it doesn't endear him to UG, who is a trusted subordinate of Youngchil. Youngchil is a very different religious leader from Jin-soo. He's a showman who lives for the power and spectacle. He vastly enjoys his new role as the chairman of New Truth and has taken the organization to new heights. They have the government and media in their pocket and even have their own broadcast station where they film the demonstrations in a controlled performance. The sinner kneels on a stage backed by a creepy mural of Jin-soo and a gaggle of children in a flower field. Youngchil comes out in his robe and puts on a show to further humiliate the sinner in front of the crowd, which includes distraught family. On one occasion, as the bloody spectacle commences, Youngchil smiles delightedly and asks about their ratings, a disturbingly high 87%. These public demonstrations may primarily be a way to keep people in line and accept the New Truth doctrine, but they also feel like disgusting sport. People have always enjoyed violent displays, gladiator matches, bullfights, boxing, and a host of other similar activities, both past and present. These demonstrations feel like a sanctioned way to engage with such violence while people convince themselves it's okay because the victims are bad people, not like them. Of course, you can't have a regime without an underground resistance. Here, that comes in the form of a shadowy organization known as Soto. They help the Hellbound vanish before New Truth can force them into a public demonstration. Soto has agents everywhere, which is how they get their intel and track victims down to offer their services. And here we get our first big reveal: Hygiene isn't dead. She survived the attack and has been underground as the head of Soto, fighting back against New Truth. In the intervening 4 years, Hygiene has turned into a hardcore badass. She got the obligatory short haircut, a scar, and some fighting skills. She's determined to take New Truth down and has been doing a decent job of thwarting them thus far. Her operation is meticulous enough that it's hard to even find evidence of their existence, much less track them down. It's in this atmosphere that a bomb drops and threatens everything New Truth has achieved. Young Jae's wife Sohyun has just given birth and is still in the hospital with her newborn. She records a video to send to Young Jae and catches an angel delivering a prophecy to her newborn baby that she's bound for hell in mere days. A baby. New Truth has painstakingly cultivated their doctrine and image over the years, ensuring consistency. Their definition of sin revolves around the idea of choice. Sin is something preventable through effort. If the world were to learn that an innocent baby is damned, that would shake their faith in New Truth, God, and their version of reality to the core. This horrific situation of a hellbound baby drives the latter half of the drama. Young Jae is desperate for some way to protect his baby and goes to Soto for help, but he's appalled when they want to broadcast his baby's demonstration. Hygiene knows the public won't believe that Jin-soo, and therefore New Truth, was a fraud unless they see evidence with their own eyes. She doesn't push it though, and leaves it up to the parents to decide whether they want to have their baby's death disguised as an accident or whether they want to use it to expose New Truth's lies. It's agonizing for Young Jae and Sohyun, who can't save their baby but can only choose to keep their baby's death private or publicize it for a greater cause. Sohyun and Young Jae handle the situation in different ways, with Young Jae finding solace in action while Sohyun withdraws. Young Jae has never bought into New Truth's ideology much, but Sohyun seems to believe in their religion to some degree. She struggles with the idea that her baby is somehow evil and deserving of hell while hating herself for that thought. Sohyun is tormented and almost gets their family killed in her quest to find answers, but it's hard to fault her much given the trauma of the situation. We do get one more return character from the beginning who comes into play in the final episode. Hygiene arranges for Young Bae, Sohyun, and their baby to stay with someone bound for hell who secretly lives in a rundown apartment complex. It turns out to be the obnoxious Arrowhead broadcaster who looks much more normal without his loud getup. His name is Dongwook, and as a devoted New Truth follower, he's been wondering how he possibly sinned given his strict adherence to doctrine. Seeing the innocent baby's fate, he understands maybe he didn't do anything wrong either. But there's something seemingly unstable about him. His broadcast persona appears more an exaggeration than fiction, that makes him unpredictable. He's still a believer despite being hellbound, and he finds a way to interpret God's will regarding both his and the baby's demonstrations that doesn't bode well for our struggling family. I won't go into the specifics of the final climax with the baby's demonstration. I don't want to completely spoil the ending, except to say it's impactful and suspenseful. Everyone is trying to use the baby for their own ends, so we get an intense finale with New Truth, Soto, Dongwook, and the rock monsters all in a war for this innocent infant while Youngjae and Sohyun do everything in their power to protect their baby. Then we get the final scene that potentially changes everything. Remember how Youngjae's house was turned into a sacred site? Her remains were left untouched in a glass case on display. They suddenly start coming back to life, and Youngjae is fully regenerated. So, that definitely leaves things open for a season 2.